I'd like to introduce our energy infrastructure panel. If they could please join us. I thank very much Teresa for her remarks, and I kind of gave you a forewarning that you couldn't talk too much about LNG Phase 2, but Teresa, you know we're there for you. So I'd like to introduce Seamus O'Regan. Obviously, he's going to chair and moderate the panel. Joining us on the stage are Vivone from TC Energy and Devin Iversen from Enbridge. Please, a round of applause for our energy infrastructure panel.
Thanks, Teresa, for the great talk. And going back just one step further, you know, Sean took the stage, and in about a half an hour or so, we're going to have an economic statement from the finance minister. Even just yesterday, I think, trying to get our heads around, we were on a political panel yesterday, and news was breaking then of the new sovereign wealth fund. So there's a lot happening, and a lot happening very quickly. And Teresa, why don't I begin with you? Tell me what you thought of yesterday's announcement. You know, you probably have a team that were able to at least discern something in terms of how it affects your projects and the jobs associated with your projects. What do you think of it?
I'm going to be honest, all investment is good investment. So I'm just pleased to see the commitment to building big infrastructure in Canada, to contributing, Canada being able to contribute to what's happening in the globe right now with our allies and our people that we're aligned with. I think it's all good.
Yeah. What do you want to hear today from an economic standpoint? What are you going to be looking for?
That's a good question. I actually don't have a clear answer to that. I'm going to be looking for more LNG, more pipelines, more energy, more across everything. And we saw the nuclear folks speaking earlier. More nuclear. Like it's all good.
Yeah, all of the above.
Yeah.
Chris, what about you? Tell me about, I'll ask the same two questions to you. Go ahead.
Chris,
sorry, yes.
Yeah, I think TC Energy, you know, what we've been, as supportive as we have been around the, you know, the push for major projects and the support from the government for major projects, I think, you know, the vast majority of what we do is not major projects, despite the fact that we're a large
but you
energy.
get things to major projects.
Well, we build much smaller projects. So think of it in baseball terms as kind of singles and doubles, right? I mean, that's mostly what we do. And, you know, getting the regulatory system to a point where it is supporting those singles and doubles versus the, you know, triples and home runs is a really, really important piece. And I think that's where the government does have some work to do, but we believe they've been listening.
Steady progress.
Yeah, and just making sure that there's a real focus on the smaller projects, right? If you don't qualify to be on a list, or, you know, you should still have the focus of the decision makers and of the regulatory system.
It's been an eventful week, because last Friday I was at the Empire Club in Toronto. Tim Hodgson, the Minister of Energy and Natural Resources, was speaking, and he had just come from a press conference about a massive new development for Enbridge 2. Tell us about the it's Sunrise, right?
Sunrise, yeah. So the Sunrise project, we just got the paperwork from the energy regulator on Monday. Minister Hodgson announced it on Friday. This is a culmination of years of work for us in the regulatory application process. That's a $4 billion project in the west coast of Canada, BC, on our west coast gas system. And we are hopeful we'll be under construction this summer, some of the early ground clearing work as well. And that's a pretty critical expansion of that system to feed wood fiber LNG, which is one of our projects that we're investors in, and to make sure that we have strong supply of gas for the lower mainland of BC as well.
So that's a big win.
It's a huge win. And really importantly, this is the first time in a while we've seen one of the projects where the conditions that were placed on that project from the energy regulator weren't modified during the GIC process. And that I think is a heartening kind of drumbeat of maybe what we are going to see more of with the new government. Are we going to have, I'd say the last 10 years we had a lot of conditions just slapped on. I would call it pushing the easy button from the regulator. We didn't see that this time. This is the first time in a while we haven't seen that. So I'm encouraged by that.
Big news yesterday, a $16 billion takeover by Shell, buying ARC Resources. How does that affect your business? Prime Minister characterized it as a vote of confidence in the country.
Yeah, I'm going to give my personal perspective. So I started with Shell 22 years ago. And in my time with Shell, they've shrunk substantially in Canada. And to see this investment, I'm just thrilled. I think it's a statement about Canadians' ability to contribute to the global energy landscape. And I think it's nothing but good news in terms of just seeing that amount of growth in such a short time. So that's great.
You had mentioned in your speech, and I'll give the other two gentlemen time to talk about it too, how you worked ground up, and we heard that when the nuclear panel was up. The secret sauce is the stability that you get when you begin that relationship with trade unions, with building trades very early on in the process. Tell me about your experience with that on LNG.
Absolutely. So I've been with LNG Canada for 6 years. When I first visited the site, it was mud. There was nothing else there.
And now you're on your 79th shipment?
Now we're on our 79th shipment. Well, we just shipped it, so we're probably on our 80th by now. So it's amazing how much it's changed. It now looks like almost a refinery in terms of just how large it is in scale. What I would say has been so incredible is that between Coastal GasLink Pipeline and LNG Canada, over 75,000 individual Canadians built that project. That is families connected to what we've done. It's entire multi-generational groups working together. It's incredible how many Canadians have been part of that. And to mobilize that kind of workforce with the skills required from across Canada, yeah, we started preferentially in BC, but there simply isn't enough people to do that kind of a project. So all across Canada, bringing those people to our site to actually create what we've created together, and then to see it start up has just been mind-blowing. And to give a very strange analogy, I went to Disneyland for the first time about 3 years ago with my kids, not by myself. And I was just bowled over at the imagination and creativity and engineering that goes into imagining a ride and then making it happen. LNG Canada is kind of like Disneyland for those of us who are incredibly geeky in terms of just the imagination, creativity, scale, and skill that goes into it. It's amazing.
Devin, one of the things I was most proud of when I heard the announcement on Sunrise is you worked, or you will be working with 38 different First Nations?
Yeah, that's right. We sold an equity stake to 38 BC Indigenous nations. They own about 12.5% of that pipeline. It was the first equity ownership stake that was backed by the new federal loan guarantee program. So we're really proud of that, and we think it's a sign of better ways to build going forward.
That is a lot of hard work, negotiating with 38 First Nations for equity positions on this.
We did not do that at a restaurant on a weekend. That took a couple of years of long talking. Yeah.
But there is stability that comes from that, right? I mean, that's what you gain. And people talk about social license, but it's a matter of the people who are closest to the ground, who are from that land, who are of that land, saying thumbs up, we want to be involved.
Well, it's amazing the difference that it has, shifting things from kind of an adversarial sometimes process when you're pushing things through the regulatory process to, we're used to when we're building big things, that's what we do. You can't make everybody happy. No. But it's very rare for the people that are happy to actually step up and lend their voice to a project. We had, in part because of the work we did with Indigenous equity, we had, I think it was 83 letters of support filed to the regulator on behalf of this latest expansion project, which is, I know, that doesn't sound like a lot. That's a lot in the regulatory permitting world and with stakeholder engagement. People are happy to tell you when they're not happy, but when they're happy about something and they want to see it go ahead, it's really helpful. And we will have had support from some of our union friends as well, and that all matters. It makes it a lot easier for the regulator to do their job.
A lot, Chris, has changed in the past little while, hasn't it? A lot has changed in terms, and the reason why, I mean, I don't need everybody in this room understands it, but just to reiterate it, I mean, You know, when I was Minister of Natural Resources, at one point I just started calling it the Ministry of Indigenous Economic Development. Because you can't get anything built in this country, particularly in the natural resources sector, unless you have agreements with First Nations, with Inuit, with Métis. And that's a fact. But we have come a long way in our ability to do that, haven't we?
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, certainly TC Energy, but I think industry in general understands that it's table stakes. They're learning how to advocate for certain government programs that then can support the underwriting of equity. So it ultimately is a win-win, there's no question. And yeah, and I think, you know, Canada is sort of leading the way, I think, from that perspective. I know within TC Energy, the amount that we can teach, you know, our Mexican colleagues about, you know, some of the work that we're doing around reconciliation in Canada is really important. So it's, yeah, a lot has changed, you're right.
What would you say you guys are doing differently now than you weren't before in order to see that change? Anything you recognize? Or?
Well, I think it's just a recognition from the get-go that you are going to approach, you know, at conception stage, right? That this isn't going to be, you know, coming to communities with a well-baked kind of final project idea. It's about really consulting from, you know, kind of the very initial ground level. Yeah, I think that's probably the thing that has changed the most, is just how early you want to bring communities in.
Devin, is that what you guys did?
Yeah, I honestly think that feels like a lesson the whole industry has learned over the last, call it 15 years, is you show up a lot earlier than you might otherwise expect. You show up with some humility, and you're there to actually kind of work together and figure things out. So it's not, here we're at our class 1 engineering design and we are ready to go. We're there really early. And the communities pick up on that when you show up and say, no, we don't have all the details ready. Makes companies like a lot of engineers, it makes us very uncomfortable. I'm not an engineer, but I see it in the company. People get very nervous talking about things that they're not certain of yet. It's like, no, that's not how we do things when it comes to community engagement. It's a lot easier to adjust the engineering if you know an issue earlier.
You guys were early starters on this too.
Very much so, and I would add, you know, I used to run a maintenance team, and if you bring in maintenance and construction folks for part of your constructability reviews before you build it, you don't end up with a shell and tube heat exchanger with an irreplaceable bundle in the middle of your unit with no ability to access it, right? So you can avoid these issues that cause you massive problems down the road if you bring in the people with the insight and the skills early to say, hey, think about this, make sure you can access that piece. And I'll make the analogy to our First Nations consultation. We had, an example would be GitGat giving us a lot of insight into the marine mammal movements throughout the Douglas Channel and the requirements for LNG carriers to travel a certain speed to avoid any potential for interactions. And so you take that in as part of your design, and all of a sudden you're in a much better position to avoid having issues before they start. So approaching consultation as a learning activity, as a thing that can actually vastly improve your design or your operational plans has been foundational to how LNG Canada has approached it and has absolutely improved our asset.
Yeah, people can tell when they're just a box to check.
Yes, they can.
They can tell.
Yeah.
They can tell. Let's get down to brass tacks in terms of, because I'm sure a lot of people in this room are wondering, okay, got these 3 massive companies up here. What are their plans for the next 3 to 5 years, and what that would mean for the building trades we're represented in this room? Why don't I put you on the hot seat first, Chris? What's the outlook for the next 3 to 5 years that you can share with this group?
Sure. You know, I mean, our capital plan is obviously public. You know, we look to spend somewhere between $6 and $7 billion across the 3 jurisdictions that we operate, so Mexico, US, and Canada. I think for a number of years, Canada has been sort of less attractive. I think that's really changing. The one thing that I would say is that it's the concentration around major projects is important, but you know, I think that we are looking at a very consistent, you know, kind of rollout of, you know, slightly smaller projects in Canada that are still extremely important, and you know, like will be really, really like good paying jobs, lots of work, but it's the consistency of the rollout of those projects of the next 3 to 5 years that I think is going to be really important. So as much as, certainly there will be the chance to build kind of some of these bigger high profile major projects, I think it's the consistent rollout of, kind of the singles and doubles that I was talking about that really is going to be important for a lot of the trades across the country.
One of the last assignments I had as a minister was, brace yourself for this title, Chairman of the Ministerial Working Group on Regulatory Efficiency and Clean Growth. And we came up with these ideas of a major projects office and a major projects list and one project, one assessment. And you know how many people showed up at the press conference? 0. Now the public appetite has completely changed. And these things are front and center, right? It's incredible how Canadians now want to see things built. Devin, what do you see for the next 3 to 5 years, and particularly how it affects people who are represented in this room?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, our capital plan's also public. Just last year, the 5-year plan had $29 billion in it. 1 year later, we're at $39 billion over the next 5 years that we're going to be deploying across Canada and the United States. I'd say approximately a third of that is in Canada. And a big chunk of that is in BC. So there's the Sunrise project that we just announced, that was just approved on Monday. That is about a $4 billion project. And then there's projects that are ahead of that and a little bit behind that, all associated with that gas network, that'll add on another $4 billion worth of work. So what does that mean for man hours? We're looking at, I think it's the Aspen Point project that we've already sourced and we're getting ready and we're going on right now. That's, I think, a 2 million man-hour job, and then the Sunrise, I think, is almost 5 million man-hours. It's a massive amount of work that's rolling ahead. I don't want to downplay also, though, the kind of steady, consistent work. On a very different side of the country, right here in Ontario, we spend $1 billion every single year, over $1 billion. Almost over half of that is union work and it's man-hour work, and that is just a steady expanding the gas system. Most people, if you're from Ontario, if you're not from Ontario, you know us as the big pipeline company. If you're from Ontario, you know us as the people who send you your gas bill every month. And but maintaining that massive system requires just an enormous amount of man-hours to maintain.
And confident about a pipeline?
Which one, oil?
Alberta to BC.
If you'd asked me this 6 months ago, I'd say unlikely. And today, especially after we're seeing, is that going to be part of the Sovereign Wealth Fund announcement that the Prime Minister's talking about? I don't know. It seems like it might be. And so what we've been saying for a long time is there's no point in building the infrastructure if our customers can't grow at scale in time to fill it. If we can't produce enough gas, if we can't produce enough oil, and the incentive to significantly grow that production in this country has been pretty low for a good 10 years. And if we can change that, which is going to require a massive policy change, a lot of this is at stake with the MOU and between Alberta and Ottawa, that big negotiation that's happening right now. If that lands well, I think you could see production growing significantly. The world demand is certainly there.
Yeah. The times we live in.
Yeah, but can we fill it? And if it's not incremental production, then we're wasting tens of billions of dollars on a project that's not going to be filled. We don't want to build something that just sits empty.
Right. So watch this space.
I think something may well come, and we'll see. And if it can be built, we are open to being part of that.
Yeah, I have to say that the MOU between the federal government and the government of Alberta, it's a huge change I've seen in Calgary, within the business community anyway. It has changed things, and it will come time to deliver. Between those two governments for sure.
We'll see I don't know if they're announcing it right now. We'll see what kind of regulatory details that are coming out today.
Anybody sees it on their phone, raise their hand. I'm going to ask the same question to you, and I'm curious too. With the ARC takeover by Shell announced, potential takeover, does that affect you? Does that affect Kitimat too?
I can't really comment on ARC and Shell, but what I can comment on is that we are evaluating a phase 2 expansion. And I'm personally really hopeful we see that happen. It'll double the size of the facility in Kitimat up to 28 MPTA. And at that size, we're one of the largest, 5 top largest LNG facilities in the world. So we're talking about putting Canada on the map quite significantly with that decision. And I mean, those facilities continue to grow as well. There's always going to be a challenge to hang in those top 5 numbers, but it starts to become a very large scale facility. And in terms of workforce, we'll need about 2/3 of the workforce that we needed for phase 1, which is, again, a huge number of Canadian people. So it's exciting. I really hope we see that happen. And when that decision comes through, it'll be a pretty big announcement. I don't think that's what's being announced at 4 p.m. today, but I could be wrong.
And location. You're so much closer to the Asian market, aren't you?
It's incredible, and even seeing, one of the advantages we don't often talk about with LNG Canada is that you're substantially closer to the Asian market than other facilities, but a lot of people don't know that there are no other LNG facilities on the west coast of North America. So that unfettered access, you're not going through the Panama Canal or the Strait of Hormuz or I can't remember what it's called, Straits of Darwin off of Australia. There's these global pinch points that are known weaknesses in the shipping system. And we have this massive Pacific Ocean that we can go across to get to Asia. It is a huge strategic advantage in the global energy security race. So it's a very important and strategic location. I don't know if anybody here's been to Kitimat. It may not feel that way when you're hanging out in town going to the A&W, but it is incredible what that place offers.
One thing, and Newfoundlanders in the room are well aware of this, but one of the advantages of Newfoundland sweet light crude, not only is it one of the cleanest sources of oil in the world, but we are in tidewater, which is a huge advantage. We don't have to get to it, we're right in the middle of it. Only have a few minutes left, and I have been describing this room in these next few days as the most powerful room in the country. Because if we're all talking about building, this is the room of the builders. And not only builders, but people with incredible political power right now with government and with governments right across the country. So with the other panelists that we've had, I wanted to give them the opportunity, and you the opportunity, to speak to this room. They are powerful lobbyists, as I said, with politicians all across the country, First Nations. What is the message you need them to get through? What do you need to see from the federal government, from provincial governments, from Indigenous governments in order to get things built? Chris?
Yeah, I think I would reiterate what I was talking about earlier on, which is on regulatory reform, permitting reform, the certainty that private industry requires to make the investments. And it's not just about the major projects. It's a couple of layers down, the smaller projects that ultimately add up to the kind of longer term consistent flow. I think that that's a really, really critical element. And like I said, I think the government is listening, but it's always important to give them a little push, right? And remind them of it's not just private industry that's looking for this, like the knock-on effects for, the building trades and for communities and for society as a whole is this is how we're going to build this country, right? Is kind of one small project at a time. So I do think that if there was one thing, I would say that's the message to get across to Ottawa.
In an uncertain world, certainty wherever you can find it. Yeah, agreed. Devin?
Well, I'd ask us to recognize that it's not a stationary target. We're in a race with the United States for capital. And it's not a coincidence that your company, my company, is investing more in the United States. It's not that Canada isn't abundantly blessed with resources. It's just it's been challenging to build stuff on time and at a decent cost. And the advantages of going to the United States have been significant for some time. What's going to change that? I'm really keen to see what happens with the MOU with Alberta and Ottawa. That is going to set the new regulatory framework for the rest of the country, to be frank. What specifically needs to change? We need to stop pretending that Canada operates in some kind of policy bubble. We don't. We compete with capital with all the big allocators in the rest of the world. And when they look at us and say we're the only one of the top 10 oil producing jurisdictions in the world that penalizes its companies with a carbon price, that's not helpful. It is just digging us into a hole that we've got to find our way out of before we can think about making that investment. So Clean Electricity Act, that's going to have to change quite significantly. It puts us at a significant competitive disadvantage. If we're not competitive, the capital doesn't care. It's going to go where it can make the return. That's the obligation that we have to our shareholders. The governments just have to recognize, and we can use your help in making sure that the government feels that pressure. You've signaled, the Prime Minister has signaled, we're making a change. We're pivoting away from the more punitive, I would call it the climate agenda that we've had. We have to keep pivoting away from that if we're going to get that capital back. Your help would be much appreciated.
Teresa.
I'm going to take a different tack on this answer. LNG Canada was supposed to start up in mid-2025. That was our promise. We started up June 30th, 2025. So you can do big projects predictably in Canada. And this room is a big part of achieving predictable schedules, predictable budgets, predictable outcomes. So my ask is that Canadian Labour continues to develop young apprentices, continues to have high standards of quality and workmanship. And my 14-year-old son says he wants to be a welder when he grows up. I hope he is. And I hope that you guys continue to push those high safety standards so he goes to work and comes home safe. So that's what I think we need.
Always leave it in a good mood. I want to thank all our panelists. I think this was really, really insightful, and the future does look bright. Thank you all. Much, much appreciated. Everybody, thank you.